Toga. Thanks for the energy you're bringing into this conversation. I'd like to thank everyone for joining this call and this platform, the Till Around the World platform. It's my first time here, so please forgive me if I'm not too conversant with certain things, but I will try my best to make this as an interesting discussion as much as I can. So let me share my screen. Please let me know if you can see it.
We can see it.
Okay, awesome. All right. Okay, so I'm trying to minimize. Yeah, fantastic. All right, so I'll just go straight into the discussion, and I'll be sharing, as Toga said, about my journey into Agile and how I transited from being a traditional project manager into the Agile world and into Agile leadership. I see there's some similarities between Agile and Teal, and I'm hoping to be able to touch on some of those and also inspire some. There's a certain picture here you can see on my slides. These three gentlemen, it's a statue that we have right in the center of my city. So when you're approaching or coming into my city, which is Lagos in Nigeria, you have this statue and it welcomes you. These three men welcome you into the place. So this is my own way of saying welcome to this talk and welcome to this session. So the details about my bio, I think, are on the main site, so I won't focus on that. I'll just go straight into the talk. So we're going to be addressing three key areas or three key parts of this talk. The first is about the defining moments of my journey. The second will be about how I navigated the journey and what it led to, and also a call to action on something that you can reflect on as you start your own journey as well, or as you support your organization in starting their own journey. So the first, talking about the defining moment, how did I get into the space? So my journey into Agile was as a result of a major career transition for me. So I just been promoted to be the head of the project management office at the time. I'd spent a couple of years managing projects, and I felt I was in a good place within the organization. Rising to leadership, supporting people that were formerly colleagues that I now had to inspire as a leader. And coming into that, I was excited about the prospects and all the things that I was going to do. But I realized that, the organization around me was changing in a way that I wasn't familiar with. I realized that a lot of work that we're doing at the time in the PMO was not being wasn't being, recognized. So at that point in time, I was the only female manager reporting to my director at the time. And in the conversations in the room, I watched how projects were assigned, very interesting and strategic projects were assigned to other members of the team, but I felt like I was being given the less reputable work, or the work that wasn't so inspiring and encouraging. But I stuck it out anyway because I had something to prove, as I mentioned, and it got to a level where, I felt that my team wasn't feeling valued and appreciated, and they were putting in a lot of work into transforming the organization. And what was very interesting to us was the fact that, other managers would be given very interesting work, and when they fumble at it or fail at it, they would now come to me and my team and say, "Oh, Carol, help us fix this." And so we felt, that we're doing all the hard work, but we're not seeing all the value in that relationship or in that dynamics. So as a person, as a leader, I felt kind of stuck, because I had just gotten to that role and I wanted to inspire. I wanted to do great things, but I wasn't given the platform to do the kind of things that I wanted to do. I mentioned also that the organization was changing. And what that meant was that the management of the organization had just recently heard about Agile, and everybody wanted to get into it. Everybody wanted to do Agile, wanted to transform. We had a strategy session and they told us, "Oh, Carol, you and your team have to transform within the next 6 months and become an Agile PMO." And, I was struggling with the concept and I was like, what does this even mean? How do you transform just like that? So that was a major turning point for me because, at the time when they started, they brought in a consultant to support us on our transformation journey. My team wasn't even consulted or brought into those conversations, and, it sparked something in me. And I was like, look, guys, we need to understand this agile thing. We need to understand how it works and make a success out of it and essentially transform ourselves and transform our team such that anytime they mention agile in this organization, we would be the leaders, we would be the voice, in this conversation. And that was how the journey started for us and also started for me as well. And I call this the fork in the road moment, right? For me. And it happens a lot, to a lot of us. We come to points where we reach a point of career stagnation and we feel that there's a need for us to change, to transform. And sometimes we really don't even know how. We don't know what the next step is. We don't know what direction to move in. And, that leads to us, and that leads to a lot of times people giving up and just going, hiding somewhere, shrinking in the background, but I want to tell you about how I was able to, move in a positive direction and how that helped my team and myself to make a change in the organization. So, and I just mentioned that, organizations have triggers. There are things that trigger transformation in organizations. So myself and Tolga at this point want to find out from you, what are the things that have triggered transformation in your organization today? So let's say your organization has already started to transform, or you have maybe faced a major, decision point, a fork in the road moment, and you've decided to make a change. What are the things that have triggered that transformation for you in your space or in your organization? So we have a little poll here, a Menti poll. You can just scan the QR code and fill in the poll, and we would see the results. Or you could also use the link here as well. Tolga, I don't know if I'm sharing, so I can't really see the screen. Maybe I should stop sharing for a moment.
No, all good. Now, admittedly, this is a different Mentimeter than the one I had posted earlier for the.
Oh, really?
Yes, than I had posted for the questions, but the participants are obviously much more tech savvy than I am, because I can see the first. I can see the first word shining up quite brightly here on my end.
Maybe I should stop sharing so I can see it as well.
Yeah, and then maybe I will just share my screen for the time being.
Awesome.
And I love how we're bouncing back and forth, Carol. We're doing well here, I would say. So far, however, I can only see one, and that's cost. Any other thoughts?
I didn't catch the link.
You didn't catch the link?
That's definitely a major trigger.
Let me post it into the chat right now. Then you should be able to click on this one. But remember, this is different than the one.
Oh, it's different from the one on my. Okay, so let's use the one that you are presenting. I'm sending the code right now.
Well, I just posted it in the chat, Carol. So, and I can see there's a lot more coming up now.
Oh, awesome.
Can you guys see my screen?
I can see it.
Super.
Yeah.
All right, so we're getting some very interesting answers.
Wow.
Fed up with old ways. Oh, definitely. That's a huge trigger. Staff fluctuation. Thank you. To be more efficient, diminishing bottom lines. Oh, yes, that's really when the organization or the leaders start to notice when the lion's share of their market share starts dwindling. To gain efficiency, competition, crisis, and growth. I'm looking for the one that is. We can also vote for certain points, that we feel it resonates more across our organization.
But there's, I see multiple ones around the whole financial cost, right? But then I as well see value realization, customer centricity, even so it's called bad customer centricity. I guess that's what motivated the transformation. I do see a lot on the emotional side, right? Frustration, motivation, staff fluctuation, which typically has a, a internal value question behind it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're right. I can see a lot around the cost, around people, cost, competition. You know, I would say those are the the major themes. Toxic culture, yes, that's another one. That's another major one.
So,
Okay.
Carol, while this is all interesting, I would now like to hear from you, since I'm assuming there were similar realities in your organization when you started the whole transformation. What did you do to address some of these? So I'll stop sharing my screen and hand the reins back over to you.
Thank you. Yeah, so I think for my organization at the time, the major driver, was the major driver at the time was the fact that they wanted to become more customer centric. They wanted to move from a commercial to a retail structure. It was a bank. So they wanted to move, change their business model significantly. And the drive was customer satisfaction. Another major drive was transparency into the whole initiative portfolio. So you had pockets of activities going on at the time, and management just couldn't see what was really going on and what was really moving forward or what was slowing down. So at that point, they really wanted to have all that information, and that sort of drove, the conversations around that. So I'm going to continue so that I don't. All right. And sorry, I'm just trying to. Okay. Yes. So thank you so much for your contributions. I think we've gotten the general idea of the different things that have triggered change in different organizations, and I think some of them bring true to the points I have here, things like market share loss, customer moments, where at that point where your customer, starts the customer value or your value proposition as an organization, sort of does not resonate with the needs of your customer anymore, or leadership and employees. So really, what is the purpose of a business, and how is it supposed to continue to serve and assist the customers in doing that? And one of the areas that we can say is it's to continuously create new value for customers. I like this definition from Professor Rogers, because for me, it just speaks to the fact that your purpose is not about money, but really about creating value for your customers, right? So now I'm just going to talk about, what I did, right? So we've explored a lot about what triggered it, what was the change, what were the changes around me, and why me and my team needed to change, but what were the steps I took? So I'm going to be sharing with us just 4 key steps, and just delving in a little bit about that. And the first one was the self-evaluation, right? So at the point I had to reflect, I sat back and I reflected on my career journey and seen what are the things that had changed for me over time? How had I evolved? So prior to working in the bank, I studied architecture. So I'm a trained architect, right? And I got myself into project management and banking and so many other areas. So I looked at my life and I realized that I'd gone through so many transitions to them well, and also I'd experienced a lot of disruptions, and those were the things that had caused me to change. And I realized that at my core, I was able to handle those changes and evolve over time. So the first thing you need to do is to reflect on yourself and see, okay, what are the things that have inspired me over the time? What are the things that have made me change, and what inspires those changes, and how have those changes helped me to help other people around me? Because I realized I had to change first before members of my team change, and before my team itself also changed as well. One of the helpful ways to do this is a model I stumbled on, Johari. It's called the Johari window model. And the idea of the model is that you compare yourself, what is known to yourself and what is known to others. So you have the first portion of that model, which speaks to the open area. That is what is known to yourself and what is known to others. Things like, everything about you that is your strengths, and what we call our strengths, our weaknesses, our interests, our values, all those areas that are known to both ourselves and to the people around us. How do those things evolve over time? And what do we really know about ourselves? There's now the other part called the blind spot. So the blind spot is the portion that is known to others, but not known to ourselves. And that is where feedback comes in, because you have the opportunity to engage people across, people at home, your family members, your friends, and your colleagues, and say, okay, how am I showing up? What kind of person do you think I am? I mean, how do I really engage you? And a lot of times you find out that, people actually have a different perception about you than you do about yourself. So I did a survey like this, and I sent it to a friend, and I found out that a lot of them, were saying, "Oh, Carol, you're a bookworm. You like to read. You're always reading. You're always was one program or the other." And they said, "Oh, Carol, you've always been curious. You've always wanted to learn new things. You've always been like that." And I honestly didn't know that about myself until I asked these questions. So that self-evaluation is so important. Then you have, of course, the part that is secret to you. It is not known to others, but is known to you. And that is what we call the hidden area. And finally, we have the unknown area. That's the part where, the wow factor, the X factor of yourself really resides, because there are certain parts of yourself that you are yet to discover. And it is through transitions that you discover those parts of yourself that you didn't really know. So this is one model that I think is helpful, and I think it's something that we can all do. It helped me to be able to discover a whole lot more about myself, and also shape the way I went about the transition journey and how I engage with members of my team. Organizations do a lot of this stuff. They do SWOT analysis, PESTEL, and all those different ways where they assess and evaluate themselves before they actually start to change. And I think the major areas they should focus on are things like your business model, the culture, and the leadership, because really that's where change happens. And even when we look at the TEAL framework, those are the aspects that really change. How do people engage with each other? What's the culture of the organization? What's the leadership like? Those are the aspects of change that we can really pull, or those are the levels of change we can really pull to make a change and to navigate a transition journey. So the second one was to look at my values. So I had to align with my values. And like I said to you, the self-assessment is the starting point. By the time you've gone through this self-assessment, you now start to look at yourself and say, okay, what do I stand for? What values are true to me? And what values do I actually apply within my organization, that make the difference, right? So, and one of the values that I could easily resonate with in Agile was the one about continuous improvement. Remember, I said that people mention that I'm very curious. So I like to try new things, right? New outfits, new hairdos. I've cut my hair short. I've made it long. I've tried different types of frames and glasses. I'm constantly trying new stuff. The most adventurous one in the family. So
And
I
let
discovered.
me interrupt you there, Amy, for like 2 seconds, Carol,
Okay.
because now you guys might not know, but I met Carol the first time about 3 days ago to just check in, get to know each other. And the way we met was that we were having an introduction conversation and she was having a new hairdo made just in that moment. So I can only underline that you love that change.
Honestly, thanks for mentioning that. And that's right. Prior to now, I had a shortcut, right? So I'm constantly changing, right? And that's one of the things about the Agile values, and TEAL values as well. You have to look at how self-management, wholesomeness. What is that journey you're taking, to be the best version of yourself? Another one is experimenting, community. I so love to experiment. I love to learn. And those values I saw were similar to values in Agile. And I decided, oh, that means there's something in Agile for me. So there's that point. There has to be that point of alignment. When you're transitioning into anything, you have to align, identify what values you have that align with the values of what you're pursuing, or what you're trying to uphold, or what you're trying to learn. And, and that is where the magic happens, because when there's an alignment, then there can be action, and then you can start to actually transit and change. So once I was able to align my values with the Agile mindset, it opened up a new vista for me. Looking at the 16th State of Agile report, I just had a look at that, and I saw that a lot of organizations that are transiting, in their transformation journey, are focusing more on softer side of things. Simon Sinek said we shouldn't call them soft skills. He says we should call them human skills, right? But the focus now is on those type of things, the culture, the behaviors, leaders' ability to transform and change management. All those concepts are what are driving successful organizations in their transition today. So it's not really about, the head knowledge you have or the structure frameworks, but how you're able to engage the people in your transition. So for me, it was about that engagement and alignment of those values. So let me go to the next step. And the next step for me was now the action part. So I haven't gone through the self-assessment and understanding, how Agile aligned with my values. Next thing was, how was I going to take action, right? So, and I call this step action and cultivate a growth mindset. Why? Because, it's not just about the action, but as you're taking the action, you're cultivating what I call a growth mindset. I'm sure some of you may be familiar with it. It was popularized by someone called Carol as well, myself, just like me, so namesake, right? And, and the idea of the growth mindset is the fact that, you look at things that you focus on the mindset rather than your intelligence, your behavior, your knowledge, your skill set, or your education. Really, because for you to be able to transition or transform either as an individual or as an organization, it starts first with the mindset. If you have a fixed mindset, you believe that certain things cannot change, they're cast in stone. But even as as TIL practitioners, and we look at the TIL methodology today, we see that a lot of it is about the mindset and how we approach, the changes that we see around us and how we're evolving with those changes, right? So as a traditional project manager, I was trained to focus on output, right? So the project had to have a deliverable. There had to be an output. But now I had to change my mindset to something that was more outcome-based, right? I had to focus on the journey and how I was evolving in this change and how I was changing and how I was engaging the team. One of the things I learned to do was to translate what I was learning personally to members of my team. So what that meant for me was that anytime I went for a training or a certification or even just the project meetings with the Agile consultant, I went back to my team and I sat down and I said, look, guys, this is what they're talking about. One of the first things we started to practice was self-organizing teams, right? And it was an interesting concept because I came to them and I said, guys, we're going to become a self-organizing team. And they all looked at me that, okay, Carol, what does that mean? So I had to sit down, explain what it meant. And I said, okay, now it's about you figuring it out, trying to understand what you need to do. If there's a problem in front of you, try and solve it first. Then come back to me and say, okay, look, Carol, this is the problem. This is how I want to solve it, or this is how I think is the best way to solve it. And this is what we need to do. And it was a bit rocky at first because they were like, okay, you're my manager. You're supposed to tell me what to do, right? But with persistence and coaching and support, we all started to get a hang of it. And that was how we started approaching it. At a certain point, we started first to imbibe the Agile practices. We transformed our meetings into stand-up meetings. So we used to have weekly meetings where we just talk about our projects and all of that, but we had to change the format of that and spend time, addressing it in an Agile way. We turned our meeting, we had a product backlog, we had discussions, like we had sprints. It was interesting, so everybody got immersed into the journey, and that was how we were able to transform and move things along. So through this process, I coined a slogan of mine, which I say, the growth is in the pain. And for me, what that slogan means is that every time I'm stretched, every time I'm evolving, and every time I'm growing, I am changing. Every time I'm experiencing that pain of the stretch and of the unfamiliar. That means I am growing, and I'm growing in the way I want to. And, anytime I felt that discomfort, and the whole process was unfamiliar to me, this slogan, really gave me the drive and the encouragement to continue in it. So how does this, help organizations, right? Organizations need to embrace learning, engagement, experimentation, just generally the approach around how the transformation is managed is more about the engagement with the people and less about, just having those structures. So as we say in the agile world, it's about being agile and not doing agile, right? And I believe that, so as I said, forgive me, I'm I'm new to teal, so I might not be using a lot of teal words, but I'm sure that by the time I go through this conference, next time I'm speaking, hopefully I'll be able to speak more like a teal practitioner. But Tolga is going to help me with some of that as well. Okay.
You're doing absolutely fine. No worries. And we're about 27 minutes
20
in right
already.
now.
Oh,
Yeah.
all right. Okay. So let me move it along. So the last step, the last step. So the last step is about measuring and improving. So I had to put in certain things that helped me to know that I was on the right track. And what were those things? I looked so my certifications, I determined that I was going to do certain certifications, certain learnings. I determined I was also going to practice what I was learning along the journey. So as I mentioned earlier, I wanted to become a coaching leader. And for me, that is the natural evolution of every manager and every leader in an organization today. You have to learn to coach. You have to learn to support your team. As you are evolving, they must evolve as well, because that's the only way that the change is far reaching and successful. Then, my self-awareness level was really heightened. I now understand myself a whole lot better. And it also helped me to understand members of my team, because I had to learn to listen not just with my head, but also with my heart. Empathy and all those type of things came into play, which I really wasn't doing. I must be frank, I wasn't really doing most of those things until I started on this journey. So it made a huge, significant change to the way I lead and support my team. So for organizations, this shows up in different ways. What we're seeing from the State of Agile report today is that Agile teams are measuring themselves not just by on-time delivery, but by how they are supporting the businesses in meeting its objective. And I think that's the right way to measure and to improve. So what was the outcome? What was the result of all this that I spoke about? First was what I call a bespoke version of Agile, right? So the point is that for me, it's not about adopting Agile, but really what problem is Agile going to solve for me? And what problem is it solving for my organization? How does it help us? How is it related or tied to our values? How does it help us achieve our strategy or our focus? How does it help us deliver results? How does it help us engage our customers, really? So the purpose of transition is the outcome of the result and how all those things are changing based on your engagement with whatever it is. So whether it's teal, I'm speaking more about Agile because that's my experience, but if your experience is teal, then how is teal helping you to solve the problems in your organization or the challenges that your organization is facing? How is it helping you to resolve those things that triggered you to transform in the first place? So whatever it is you're doing, it has to be bespoke to you. It has to solve that challenge or solve for that challenge or that problem that you're trying to bring it to bear for. Then the next thing is tailoring. So what we realized was that we got a version of Agile that was tailored to suit our team, tailored to suit the organization, and it helped us, as a team evolve into a better team, and we were able to support the organization better. So what happened at the end of the day was that, every time they wanted to speak about anything Agile in the organization, it had to come to our team and they say, okay, go to PMO. They understand what they need to do. All the projects that when it was before started to come. In fact, we had too many to handle. And beyond just doing projects, we were kind of thought leaders in the organization. We established an Agile community of practice to support the different product managers and Scrum teams within the organization, which hadn't existed, prior to that time. So, I put here a picture of the team, and really we grew stronger together. We evolved with the whole journey, and we became better at it. Everybody in the team has moved on from the organization, doing great stuff and different things, but it was a good learning journey for us. So my final takeaway to us really is this: do these triggers signify an opportunity for you to seize, or are they a dead end for you? It depends on it depends on your mindset and the way you approach it. So what do you do when you're faced with a call to transition? How do you face it? Do you seize the opportunity, or do you let go? The next thing is that we shouldn't just jump into any tide. The whole idea is to understand and how it helps you to solve the challenges that you're facing, either as an individual or as an organization. You have to forge your own tailored path, and not the one that everybody travels, but the one that is best meant for you. And the final thing is we need to take our steps, inspect and adapt as we progress. It's not as straightforward as I may have made it seem. There were a lot of twists and turns, but we inspect and adapt, and we improve along the way. So I think I'll just stop here, and thank you so much for your attention. I overshot the time, but well, I hope
that's okay, because you did a perfect transition, Carol. And maybe if we just switch off the screen share and have a conversation around it. And but you ended the conversation at a really interesting point, which resonates very much with the question that we have here, which is, if I heard you correctly, there is no one approach to it, but it is about testing and trying out what do we need in our organization to overcome the challenges that we're faced. That said, even when you're testing stuff out, you might be faced with resistance from individuals, from teams within the organization. Can you give us a feeling on how you overcame some of that resistance? What was your approach to that?
Okay, thank you. So I think it's about first understanding the viewpoint of that person that is having the resistance, right? Because you need to know what exactly they're struggling with. So is it the way you're going about it, or is it the concept itself, or are there circumstances around them that are preventing them from changing? So maybe they're interested. Let me give an example. So I had a lot of people in my team, for example, who are traditional project managers, and they needed to understand, okay, so do I just jump and become a scrum master? What are the things that I need to do to change from here to there? So the first thing is to listen to the person, hear them out, and try and understand what the challenge really is. Is it a personal challenge? Is it a challenge regarding their role? Is it a challenge in understanding what the concepts are? And with that, another step as well is to try and address some of those issues from a systemic point of view. And that was why I said we had to eventually look at creating a community of practice, because we found out that in our organization at the time, we had a lot of people who were product owners, but they didn't understand what their role was meant to be, because the organization expected them to do something else, but they were doing another thing. So we had to, come together as a community, understand what the role should be, then also look at versus what the organization expected them to practice, and now started to see how can we align. So there are some issues that are systemic challenges. So you need to understand what they are and address it at the leadership level. And there's some challenges that are personal to the individuals, and the engagement now helps you to drill down to whatever it is. So that's the way I would say.
This is interesting, right? Because ultimately what you're trying to do is address it from a systems perspective or an individual perspective. But at the end of the day, Carol, you're the spearhead. You're the one who's driving agile mindset into the organization. That must be quite a frightening idea initially when when people are looking at you, if this is something which will work or not work. How did you overcome some of those inner fears of yourself to really be that courageous individual who then created the space for others to go on that same journey?
Very interesting question. And I think I had a lot of support, right? So one of the things I did was I got into the community, the local community of Agile here in Nigeria, and I just hung around them at first. I really didn't even know what I was what I was doing, really, or what I was trying to learn. But I just hung around them, and I just said, okay, I just want to be like a sponge. Let me just soak this in and understand what exactly you guys are doing. So I attended most every meetup, every session. I did a lot of reading up on my own, and after a while it started to make some sense and I started to navigate. So what I also did was, as I learned something, I practice it. As I said, I'm always ready to experiment. I'm not afraid to try. I think that is one of the things that has helped me, because I always tell myself, look, what do I have to lose? At the end of the day, I would learn something, right? I might not get it right. I may fall on my face, but at the end of the day, I will learn. So that mindset has always driven me. So I said, look, let me just take what I've learned, this little I've learned, try it out and see if it works. If it doesn't work, okay, what are the lessons I learned from it and how can I bring it in to tweak it? But to say I won't do it at all, it's not me. So anytime I feel discouraged, right, I just go back to the community and just wail on them and say, look, guys, I need help. How can I do this? What can I do? And they refer me to some people or to a material, or sometimes I invite them to come and speak to people within my organization, to help me also, drive the change. So those are some of the ways I've managed with the challenge. I won't say I'm superwoman. There've been times when I've felt down, like discouraged about whether it was making sense and whether it was all worth it. But I just have this sense that I can only progress in the path that I know, and I know this has worked in organizations and it has worked for people. So there must be something I need to do to make it work for me. And I believe that if you keep looking for the light, you eventually see it. Really.
And I love this combination out of curiosity, courage, and as well that understanding that you don't have to be superwoman, but it is about finding that support mechanism around you, right, which can help you.
Yes.
Now, you spoke right at the beginning about, the self-discovery, finding, out through the feedback of others, where your superpowers lie, and maybe as well where there are some blind spots within you, right? Because only once we've done that inner transformation can we help others transform, as a spearhead. Tell us about the biggest surprise, or maybe the most painful surprise, which, however, helped you accelerate that inner transformation for yourself, to becoming this curious, courageous superwoman.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So, well, I think it's the fact that I don't take criticism too well. So, yeah, and Agile thrives on that. So even when it is positive, it's hard to hear. So sometimes when I remember, in fact, this reminds me of something. The first time I asked my team to give me feedback, they didn't even respond. Like, I don't know whether they were scared that I don't know, they were scared of what I was going to do, but they didn't respond. I had to call them one-on-one and say, guys, really, you have to help me. I need this feedback, right? And it's painful to hear. I discovered that for me, feedback is painful to hear, but it's necessary. So that's one thing I found out about myself.
But that's a huge tension, right? It's like that understanding that you need to receive the feedback, that curiosity which you have, but at the same time, well, let's call it what it is, being afraid of hearing something, which might not be as flattering as you would like it to be. How did you deal with that tension?
Well, well, sometimes the truth is sometimes when they don't want to give feedback, maybe I didn't push it enough. That was the first thing I did. Right? So I would say, okay, you don't want to give me feedback, it's fine, but again, it's just something in me that said, look, you're not growing if you don't get this information. So I guess it's just to roll with the punches, really. It's difficult, but what I do is when I hear the feedback, I really try to introspect and say, okay, Carol, what are they saying? I mean, is there truth in what they're saying? Is this thing real? And there's sometimes when you just have to face yourself and tell yourself the whole truth, because that's the only way you can grow. And it's been hard hearing some of the feedback, but it has really helped me change, and I continue to look forward to it, and ask about it, even though I know it's hard. So that's
And
it.
I guess at the end of the day, it's true to your slogan, right? Growth is pain, right? And so it's about embracing that to a certain degree. Now, that's something which, you can do your inner dialogue, and hopefully you've got that support mechanism which allows you to show that vulnerability and get into it. But how did you help some of your team members to get to that space where, as you said, agility is about constant feedback and, and failing to a certain degree? How did you help your team to embrace that mindset?
Well, I think it was I did this one at a time, right? So what I did was to have to agree with each of my direct team members. Okay, look, we need to have a time. It could be once a month. It could be, where we just talk. We just talk and engage, and it could be on anything at all. So depending on the person, some of them wanted it to be a fixed time, so we set up a calendar invite. For others, it would just happen naturally. But I just made them understand that we needed to have those conversations going on frequently. And we could talk about anything, movies, what they like to watch, what's happening in their lives. And from there, I try to connect it to their leadership journey. I share feedback of what I'm seeing. I share feedback about what maybe members of their team had told me about them, for example, in a certain way. And through that, we just sort of engage and we're able to blend it together. So I tried to not make it too formal, but at the same time, it had to be natural conversations that happened. So by the time appraisals came up, we had already aligned. So there were very different. There were very few instances where we had differences in appraisal, because we always just kept those communication lines going. Where I saw material or books, for example, which I felt was helpful to that particular individual, I send it to them. I say, oh, have you read this? This looks interesting. This may help you. If I see a training that I feel they must have, I make sure they get that training. So I engage the learning and development team and say, oh, I need this member of my team to attend this training, and I ask them, okay, how was the training? How did it go? What did you learn from that? It's not a straightforward relationship, because sometimes not everyone wants to go through this journey of growth and pain, right? We want to grow, but we don't always want to go through that pain that growth demands. So it hasn't always been as straightforward, but I saw a lot of them respond to it, and those that did, I could see the changes that happened.
What I really like hearing is that you took them in as whole human, right? Not only, hey, I'm expecting a certain outcome from you, and there is change which is necessary, and therefore tack, but it was spending that time which you described, getting to know them, right? What favorite movies are they watching? What's their family? Is a bit what you described. So really connecting with a full human versus just them as a worker bee, so to speak, right?
Yeah, because I realized that that's the way I would want to be engaged. I wouldn't want you to just be talking to me about work. And I would like to understand other parts, because really, if you don't understand the whole person, you can't really get the best out of that person. You can't really relate to that person, because there'll be certain assumptions you have about why the person is doing certain things. But when you understand the whole person, it's easier to say, oh, that's why you did this. Oh, that's why you did that. And, I found it very interesting, because there's some things because we're all personal and professional beings, right? We bring the mix of both to work. So if you're not able, as a leader, if you're not able to tap into the personal, you can't really get the best, even in the professional side. So
Yeah, and it's interesting. It speaks very much to the second point which you mentioned, right? On your own journey, you went through that discovery of your own values, your own motivators, and aligning them as well to a certain degree with the organizational purpose and the core for you as a leader, right? And then by spending the time with the individuals, you were able to discover that with them as well, and thus hopefully help them expand their Jahari window, right? Now,
Hopefully, yeah.
and that hopefully helped you. And there was a question about the rocky road of becoming a self-organized team, right? Now, you
Yeah.
described how you, on an individual level, maybe approached individuals, but tell us a little bit more around the key lessons that you learned out of that journey um, to becoming self-organized.
Okay. Um, I think it was, it's some of the lessons for us, right, was the fact that first everybody has to be willing to try, right? Because when you're in a self-organizing team, everything is open. You have to be transparent, right? And a lot of us come to work with some of the hidden self, right? We don't want people to really know that part of us and our insecurities. So working in that way forces you to be transparent. And I found that some people were uncomfortable with it. So, and they were uncomfortable with volunteering themselves. And I felt, that I shouldn't, because we were trying to build a new culture. I wanted people to be more willing to volunteer as opposed to being told to do certain things, right?
Mhm.
So finding that balance between having to tell someone and the person volunteering when, there's just that space when you say, okay, who will help us do this? And everybody's just quiet. I think was a challenge for us. We had to learn to be comfortable with the silence, right? So, and the fact that some people are just not there yet. They are not yet ready to get into that side of themselves. And you have to still bring them along in the journey. So when people are quiet and I say, okay, fine, I can give you guys more time to think about it. Then maybe I could reach out to someone. I say, oh, I think maybe this will be good for you to do. And we find out that, okay, with time, some people adjust to it and they get used to that. So allowing people time to adjust, really, to becoming a self-organizing team is a huge part of it. Not everybody never got there the way I thought they would, but it's because it's down to everyone's personal transition, and you can't force a transition. It has to happen naturally. No matter what you do, no matter what you say, if the person is not yet ready, they are not ready. So you have to wait for them to be ready in some cases. Yeah.
I love it. And I mean, ultimately it applies, to the organizational level just as much, right? You can't force it, but you can support it and facilitate it, but you cannot force that transformation, right? You hopefully, as you said, you can align it through setting a great vision, aligning with the purpose of the organization, and therefore motivating individuals within the organization to go onto that path of transformation.
Obviously, yeah.
But it's that pain of the silence, which I found quite intriguing. Tell me, how did you deal with that? Because now I only know you briefly, Carol, but like my impression is as well, you're someone who wants to get stuff done, and you're energetic, call for action, and now you need to suddenly take a step back as a leader and go like, I'm gonna hold that silence.
It was tough. It was really tough, honestly. Because in your mind, you're like, you already know the answer. There are sometimes because you've maybe walked that path before, you already know what needs to be done, probably, or you have a fair sense, right? But you're just like, look, somebody just speak up. Can somebody? And you're holding your breath underneath. I don't know if I dealt with it perfectly. I don't know if there was another way I could have dealt with it, but I think I just got used to doing that. And part of what helped me was over time. Initially, it was tough, really. But what has helped me recently is my experience through coaching. So, qualified agile coach and a professional coach as well. And there's a lot in coaching that talks about leaving space for silence and allowing people to figure things out themselves. So, getting comfortable with the silence is a huge part of that. So, and I find out that really at the end of the day, it's actually the solutions they come up with, a lot of, you always think you have to fix things, you always want to do see things moving, right? But I have also learned I need to hold back, to allow other people to just do it. And most of the time they come up with so amazing stuff. I'm like, I'm happy I kept quiet, because if I couldn't have said anything better. The idea was far superior to what I could have ever come up with. But if you're not able to hold that silence, you lose that opportunity to get that idea that could have made everything better for everyone.
Mm-hmm. That's a huge transition, right? And I think it's one of the challenges that a lot of leaders struggle with in this transitional phase from, managing people to actually truly leading people and organizations, right? Is suppressing that urge of thinking you have the answer and you know what needs to be done, but really, holding that tension and, orchestrating the organization being able to deal with that uncertainty.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, we've got a few more minutes left, and I just want to make sure that we captured all the questions out of the audience, or if you weren't able to put something into the Mentimeter, I need to look at that name every time I'm trying to pronounce it, and maybe I'm still mispronouncing it. But now you've got a chance to speak up, maybe from the audience, if you have one last questions of something you would like to hear from Carol. And I'm doing my virtual facilitation rule. I count to 5, and then I either nominate someone or I move on. All right, I won't be as cruel as nominating someone. But Carol, I want to say thank you very much for your insights in your journey and how you move towards it. I took a lot out of the conversation. I'm very much looking forward to continuing the conversation in the space chat, and I will be posting, or the spatial chat, sorry. I will be posting the link in there. And Carol, just a quick question. I know we had asked it before, but I have forgotten. You will be present there as well to engage with the audience if they have any further questions as well, right? Now, well,
yeah, sure.
Super fantastic. And then I just want to say, guys, thank you so much for being here. I wish you lots of fun with the rest of the Teal conference. I hope to see you in other sessions. And Carol, I'll see you over there. Thank you so much for your story.
Thank you.